All right, so today we're going to talk about the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. I want to first point out that the Northwest Ordinance was actually one of the accomplishments under the Articles of Confederation. I know we talked a lot about the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, but know that this ordinance was actually one of the accomplishments under the Articles. All right, with that said, let's talk about this term, ordinance. It means an authoritative order or decree. I also want to point out that the Northwest Ordinance was considered a law dealing with governing the Northwest Territory. So where is the Northwest? Well, today the Northwest is in the states Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. However, in 1787, they were actually in this area here. Later to be named the states Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, as well as northeastern part of Minnesota. And here is another image that shows that Northwest territory. Okay, so why did we need the Northwest Ordinance, or why did we need this law in place that would kind of talk about the dealing, or talk about how we would govern this new territory? Well, we had a lot of questions, and we weren't sure how to handle these issues. And so one of the first issues that we came across was who was going to settle in this territory. We knew that Native Americans had been living there for centuries, so ultimately who were we going to allow to move into this new territory? And essentially what they decide is they allow white settlers to kind of flood the area, and they do. Kind of quickly after we gain control of the area. Protection from Native Americans. Obviously, under the Articles of Confederation, there was no way to draft an army. They did not have the power to do so, and so we had to figure out how are we going to protect these white settlers in this new territory. And essentially what they decide to do is ask for volunteers and basically form a small military of volunteers from a few states to kind of protect these white settlers, but also to kind of negotiate with Native Americans and ideally move them out of the area. Many states were fighting over this new territory, especially those surrounding states, so Connecticut, Massachusetts, Virginia, they were all trying to make claims of this new land. However, the federal government ended up deciding that they would have control of this new land and that it would not become a part of any existing states, but it would actually become or to be divided up into brand new states of at least 3, no more than 5. I also want to point out that everything west of the Mississippi River, so this is the Mississippi River here, everything west of the Mississippi River was controlled by Spain, and that includes Florida as well. All right, so land developing companies asked for help. They wanted to sell land to pioneers moving west, and the Confederation, Congress saw this is a way to make money, so they were all for it. Thomas Jefferson makes a plan. He will first create the first draft of the Northwest Ordinance in 1784, and then Congress passes his new plan in 1787. All right, so what did it do? No fewer than 3 or more than 5 states would be formed. Admission to the Union would be available when the number of free inhabitants reached 60,000. So once 60,000 inhabitants were in the area, it could then form a constitutional convention, draft a state constitution, and then submit it to the Congress for approval. Civil rights and liberties were to be guaranteed in these areas. So this would even include basic rights like of citizenship, religious liberty, right to trial by jury, writ of habeas corpus, which is just requiring a person to be brought before a judge or court. And know also, too, that many of these basic rights that were part of the Northwest Ordinance and that were to be put in place in the new territory were also later included in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Education was also to be encouraged in these areas. They were to support schools and establish a basis for national aid for education. Slavery and involuntary servitude was to be prohibited. Not allowed. These were the new states that were created. So Ohio in 1803, Indiana 1816, Illinois 1818, Michigan 1837, Wisconsin 1848. And Ohio was the 17th state added. So why else was the Northwest Ordinance important? It essentially allowed for voting rights and office holding. Once there was 5,000 inhabitants, a representative could be elected by the people to the General Assembly. It also stated that for every 500 inhabitants, there should be a representative elected. Slavery was forbidden in the Northwest Territory, which we mentioned on the previous slide. Individual rights were preserved, and again, a lot of these rights that were preserved were later included in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Surveying, and division of land. There was a law that divided this vast area into smaller territories and then later new states. Public land sales. So effects of the Northwest Ordinance. One of the biggest effects was the Northwest Indian War. This is also known as the Ohio War. And it was just a war between the United States and a confederation of numerous Native American tribes with the support of the British. And they were fighting over control of this territory. And obviously, we were victorious. Massive estates came to dominate south and east. And this only led to an increased tension between slave and non-slave states. And it also helped fuel civil war in the 1860s.